at some point over the next 4, 8, 10 years, I firmly believe Bitcoin's going to be measured at $1 million per coin. And those businesses have not just, I think people see them as just storing Bitcoin sometimes and don't realize that that gives additional options, additional innovation, and additional use cases as the price of Bitcoin appreciates over the long term. So you've seen Strategy again pioneer with the successful Stretch product, and businesses will follow on with more preferred share offerings, and there'll be a maturity and a development within the space. But ultimately, I see businesses that have specialist talent on the board. Have they got a CEO and a founder who's a Bitcoiner and got a history in this space who can execute with high conviction? Because in 4 and 8 years and 12 years time, it's going to become more and more popular to have a Bitcoin balance sheet.
Hello, this is the Bitcoin Libertarian. Our guest today is Scott Ellam. He is the founder and CEO of XCE, Connecting Excellence Group, the UK's pioneering international executive recruitment firm built entirely on a Bitcoin standard. With a passion for connecting human capital to digital capital, Scott is at the forefront of integrating Bitcoin into corporate treasuries, employee incentives, and high-level placement for Bitcoin-savvy leaders. He is a vocal advocate for Bitcoin maximalists, calling out fiat debasement and legacy media noise while building a business that leverages BTC to boost cash flows and performance. Today, we will explore Scott's journey into Bitcoin, how XCE is revolutionizing recruitment with Bitcoin yields and treasury strategies, his takes on the current Bitcoin price correction, and what the future holds for businesses embracing sound money. Scott, welcome.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
It's nice to be here with you. For everyone who is watching this video, these videos take us a lot of time to prepare. So the only way that we want you to retribute us is to subscribe to our channel, comment the video, give us a like, because doing so, you help us a lot in our mission of painting the world orange. So now let's go to the interview. The first question is the same that I do to everyone is, Scott, how were you orange pilled?
How was I orange pilled? So 2016, somebody within the business environment who ended up going on to kind of get themselves distracted in the months following with crypto. I was running a business, running the executive recruitment firm, set that up in 2014. We get to 2016, and I had a very fortuitous first few months running the business and building the business. And after a couple of years, you start understanding the responsibilities you have as you're employing staff and as you're putting money aside in cash reserves for VAT, our value-added tax, and your corporation tax, and you start looking at cash as a store of value because it's trapped in your company. And then someone mentioned Bitcoin to me, and there's just 3 things stood out immediately. 21 million hard cap, unconfiscatable, can send it anywhere in the world. Those 3 elements, I'm probably somebody who starts with a high level of trust and then tries to work out whether that high level of trust is justified. So my mission from that point forward is find out if this is correct and verify this is correct. And should there be a hard cap of 21 million? Should it be unconfiscatable? And should it be transferred anywhere in the world? Then in my eyes, the first thought from my side is then every single multi-millionaire and every single, let's say, oligarch who needs to move countries and change jurisdictions is going to need to use this asset at some point in the future to protect their wealth. So on the basic premise, over a long term, this will go up in value. I should buy some. And then I went through that period where we went into 2017 and you think, you know what? I was absolutely right. I was correct. We've made it. And then a few months later, you find out that it's going to be a little bit slower for the people to necessarily catch on to this and understand this. So you go through that period from 2016 to 2020 where you're just trying to find good information and useful information and trying to ignore the low qualified educators in the space or avoid the crypto side of the space. And I was just really fortunate that I was running a business at the time So I just didn't have time once I'd worked Bitcoin out to study any other type of crypto. So I'm fortunate that I didn't go through the shitcoining phase. And got to 2020, and that's probably the absolute orange pill moment where I moved from Bitcoin to great. This is so interesting. Looks like a great store of value to, okay, this is Bitcoin's moment. Every government around the world, every president, every prime minister has just come out and announced to their countries that they will never allow an economic crash that will severely affect individuals where they lose houses and lose homes without hitting the big red button and printing loads of money and effectively just saying, you know what, if we need to, we'll double the money supply and pay you to sit at home just to delay that economic shock. And that was a moment where everything clicked. My personal balance sheet, I've moved into Bitcoin over them first few periods or first few years. That was the moment where I was like, right, need to seriously consider this for the business balance sheet. Mr. Saylor went and bought some Bitcoin in a public company, and it was a bit, okay, that was an obvious move. Maybe I should put it on the private business that I'm running. So October 2021, we started stacking Bitcoin in the private business. And the exact same situation as when we were in 2016, 17 happened. And we spent the first 18 months of that buying all the way through an 80% drawdown in the asset price and increasing our revenues by 35% per annum over that 4-year period. So it worked quite well in that it was counterintuitive in our revenues uncorrelated to Bitcoin. The Bitcoin price is lowering. We're able to buy more Bitcoin. So that's my journey.
Amazing. So you started doing the Bitcoin Treasury the same time as Saylor?
Not the same time. I think it took us quite a few months afterwards. It was October 2021 I first put Bitcoin on the balance sheet, and I didn't need time to build conviction in the asset. I'd already done that personally, and I was the 100% shareholder of the business. I could make the decision, so it didn't really affect me that the management accountants weren't necessarily on board with the idea or excited about the idea. It was happening, and I would wait a few years before I got to say, I told you it was a good idea.
Yes, I know. And what does your business do exactly?
So we are an international executive recruitment company. Some people might term that as a headhunting business. So we place vice president level, director level, CEO level, partner level, anything from, say, just a high level executive who's not managing people, say business development or operations management, right the way up. And we work across a number of different industries that are high growth sectors. So professional services, we work with the likes of KPMG, Deloitte, PwC, Ernst & Young over the years. Business advisory, we work with some of the world's biggest consulting firms. Logistics, we work with some of the world's biggest logistics firms. Construction engineering, we work around the world in that sector. And life sciences. And finally, recently we've announced some of the notable placements that we make. We also work within AI, intelligence and data. But of course, since going public, we've added a Bitcoin executive recruitment division as well, which is getting a lot of interest from clients in the Bitcoin space. So business model, if a client asks us to find a vice president of sales, we'll speak to every single vice president of sales who could be a good fit for their role, probably in their specific industry. And we'll continue doing that process until we've gone through the interview process, the offer process, and they've accepted a role with the client. And then we send our finalization invoice. So it's uncorrelated to Bitcoin. But the way we've designed it as a PLC, the Bitcoin Treasury strategy and a capital markets team, the operational business, is the Bitcoin Treasury actually allows us to accelerate the revenue and the cash flows, because now we can use performance-based share options to say to every high billing, high performing recruitment consultant in our industry, if you want to join XC Connecting Excellence Group, flagship business is called Spencer Riley. And when you join, you may have a similar basic salary to what you're on in a competitor. You may have a similar commission scheme to what you're on with a competitor. But with us, every time you're billing £500,000 for the business and making the business $250,000 profit, and we're able to buy Bitcoin, you're also earning some performance-based share options that are long dated, which give you the opportunity to really build value alignment between the team that's in the business, the team that's coming into the business, the motivations, and provide shareholder value over the long term. So I believe it's an opportunity that other traditional businesses that are in a similar environment to us, service-based, people-powered, if you like, will be able to replicate, and we want to be there to be able to help them replicate it by placing chief Bitcoin officers in all those businesses when they decide it's a good idea.
This is a good idea. How would be like chief Bitcoin officer? How would be this position?
So we our team, I'm incredibly proud of the board that we've built, but obviously as a headhunting business, we were under pressure before we went public to make sure we built a strong board as an advertisement for our skill set, if you like. So our chairman, Sam Roberts, is the first person in the UK to lead a Bitcoin allocation for a UK pension fund. That's a big challenge in the UK. And I think I have to give him credit for coining the term Chief Bitcoin Officer. So with the Bitcoin recruitment side of the business right now, it's not that there's a lot of people saying we'd like a Chief Bitcoin Officer. Those roles tend to be Bitcoin investment funds, Bitcoin mining businesses, Bitcoin startups, and then established Bitcoin businesses saying, we need a chief investment officer, we need a chief financial officer, we need a chief operations officer, we need a vice president of sales or client relationship management. But as we move forward, our list of traditional businesses, so we've got to connect, I think, 100,000 mid, senior, and executive level connections around the world in the business. When they start to understand the Bitcoin strategy and they want to explore Bitcoin strategy, we see a future where in the next 4 to 8 years, there'll be a demand for people in a specialist chief Bitcoin officer role that will come into a business and be able to look at not just store of value, not just capital markets products as convertible bonds and equity capital raising, preferred shares, but also medium of exchange. How do we incentivize our consumers, and how do we allow our consumers to benefit from this strategy as well? And how do we make sure that we're really embedding Bitcoin and using it to the company's advantage over the long term? So chief Bitcoin officer roles at the moment, when we're speaking to businesses that need somebody in that type of manner, it would probably be a Bitcoin Treasury company or a business that's planning on running that strategy. And the other time we might be looking at somebody in a chief Bitcoin officer role is probably on a consultancy basis, where they're doing 1 or 2 days a month in order to build that strategy and then help execute it. Can you hear me okay? I've stopped hearing myself, but I can hear a little bit of an echo. Can you hear me okay?
No, I can hear you perfectly. I think that I found there was an echo. I don't know if because of I reduced the volume, but no, don't worry. Yes, and talking about the chief Bitcoin officer, which characteristics a person must have to fit on this role?
Well, we're using that term quite generally, because if you're making an appointment with a top 4 consulting firm, they would term it as a head of digital assets, probably. And if you're making an appointment with a traditional business that's looking to inject Bitcoin into a business, they might use chief Bitcoin officer. But they also might be conscious and use the term digital assets. And I think that's just due to the stigma that you kind of see within Bitcoin in the corporate environment. So it could be across a number of different roles. It could be marketing focused. It could be capital markets and financial focused. It could be operational integration focused. So I think it's open to be decided by the business, the market that business is working in, and the objectives of that business by implementing and adopting Bitcoin. That will form the experience that they are looking for. So an example might be if you're an investment fund and you want to really get a true understanding of the Bitcoin space, see where the opportunities are and start allocating to Bitcoin, then you might be looking for someone from a chief investment officer background who's also a Bitcoin maximalist. Or if you're a PLC who's looking to use Bitcoin on the balance sheet and allow that to create products to benefit your shareholders, you might be looking for someone from a chief financial officer background who's also a Bitcoin maximalist. But I think the fundamental is what you're doing is adapting your experience in the traditional sector to find your place in the Bitcoin environment. And we want to build that bridge, not just headhunting within the space and working within our network within Bitcoin to find the right talent to fill the role for the client, but over time build that bridge for experienced executives in the traditional sectors who want to find their place in Bitcoin. Now, this might be a term that some of your viewers or some may or may not be familiar with, but there are people in chief investment officer roles who daren't mention Bitcoin in the boardroom. And if they do mention Bitcoin in the boardroom, might get a negative reaction. And it's those people we're seeing who are approaching us and saying, hey, I'm working at a high-level consultancy. My hours and my billings are over £100,000 per week in what we're charging clients. I'm working with some of the world's largest organizations on strategy and consulting, but our company does not want me to mention Bitcoin. And when an opportunity comes around in the space for someone with my experience, here's the salary I'm looking for, here's the experience I have, and here's what I would be interested in. And then as and when those roles build up, we've got that network and we can plug into that network on behalf of clients and say, we have the solution for you, which provides a solution for those people who are trapped in fiat positions looking for their space in Bitcoin, and provides a solution for those businesses looking for Bitcoin talent who want to capitalize on the benefits of being early to this space over the next decade. But all that is one division within the company that we're building. The main operating side of a business means I've got people approaching me in our industry who place within investment banks, within hedge funds, and specialists in that sector who understand Bitcoin and love Bitcoin, who are saying, can I join your company? Or can we work out a way in which I can join your company, build within your company, build a division within your company, but it's in the traditional sector. It's still driving revenue into the business, and we're using those cash flows to buy Bitcoin. So we've got a lot of opportunity, I believe, in our industry to really positively disrupt it. And I suppose the basic premise of it is attract those high-billing consultants who want to benefit from our model and lock in long-term value from the energy they're putting into their work now, with operational growth, with our capital markets experience increasing Bitcoin per share, and with the compounding at a base level of expectations, 30% per annum compound annual growth rate to the asset class as well. And we've delivered over the last 4 years, 35% compound annual growth rate to our revenue prior to the public status. So we believe there's a lot of room to shake up our industry and create an environment where ideally you either join our industry as a consultant, as an executive recruitment consultant, join our business. If you're a company competing, then you're welcome to join the group, providing you've got no debt, providing you've got cash on the balance sheet, provided you're cash flowing, and we will use that to buy Bitcoin. And if you don't want to do either of those things, then I'm here to say copy us, and here's how. And I don't think any of the results there are not good for Bitcoin, and I suppose that's the point of the business, really.
Yes, totally. And you said that your tagline is connecting human capital to digital capital. Can you break down what that means in practice? And how does your firm differ from traditional executive search groups?
Yeah, so connecting human capital to digital capital, I suppose there's a number of ways in which we do that. One is plugging Bitcoin into our balance sheet in 2021 and then going public just at the end of 2025. So we've only recently floated. is being able to allow and benefit the team within the business with an incentive to join the business, a motivation to perform within the business, and a reason to stay within the business long term, because the business is connecting them to digital capital in a way that they wouldn't normally be able to do that through the Bitcoin balance sheet and the Bitcoin strategy. And then the other way is with clients who are already in the Bitcoin space, or clients looking to inject, integrate, and adopt Bitcoin, being able to plug into our business network to be able to allow their business to connect to digital capital and build a base on digital capital on their balance sheets, or through other offerings, through using it as a medium of exchange and providing incentives for their clients and their customers as well. So that's what we mean by connecting human capital to digital capital. We are a people-powered business. Our revenue is reliant on individuals who are self-sovereign in the business, placing other individuals who make their own decisions as to whether they want to accept that high-level position and whether they want to join that client who we're working with. So the network effects that grow our executive recruitment firm around the world, and we do 70% of our revenue internationally, predominantly North America, Europe, Middle East. The network effects that drive the operational revenue growth are very similar to the network effects that drive Bitcoin growth. The Bitcoin network is reliant on people adoption and reliant on the strength of the belief and the conviction of those people building over time. And I think now what we're seeing is businesses like ours connecting both the people and the Bitcoin in manners that haven't been done before. So it's not, you don't have to just buy Bitcoin at home and plug in a node. You can also find a purpose Monday to Friday, or, Monday morning till Monday night, 7 days a week, 24/7, a purpose and a mission that aligns you with the asset class. That's a benefit to you, a benefit to the company, a benefit to the clients, and a benefit to the whole Bitcoin network as well.
Yes, excellent. And how has the treasury strategy that you apply for your company helped the business grow?
Yeah, so we had our IPO just before Christmas. We set out to raise a minimum. In fact, if I just go back before that, tell you a little bit about the team, just so it makes a little bit of sense. So I mentioned Sam Roberts as the chairman there. Also, the first person I flew out to speak to about this idea and about what we've been doing for 4 years, and he told the story on Tim Kotzman and Ed's interview a few weeks ago, was Richard Byworth. So I flew out to meet Richard Byworth, told him the story of the business, and he bought into he could see that this is an opportunity to really drive growth within a traditional business by strapping on capital markets expertise. So Richard Byworth is a board advisor. We have Vijay Selvam, who's ex-Goldman Sachs head of governance and has NASDAQ listing experience. We have Vijay on there, who's got a serious level of experience when it comes to governance and policies and procedures for public limited companies, and is a Bitcoin maximalist and wrote Principles of Bitcoin. Couple that with Richard's experience launching the largest hedge fund in Switzerland over the last decade, which holds 5,000 Bitcoin, and his expertise in capital markets, convertible bonds, futures, derivatives, and his network with investors. Adding in then a CFO who's experienced in main market and uplistings and IPOs, that was their focus. They've adopted Bitcoin throughout the IPO last year, understood Bitcoin, and they're on full time now. And we obviously have plans into the future to acquire a significant number of Bitcoin. And we'd like to see the business. We'd like to see the business holding 1,000 Bitcoin. But when it comes to uplisting and main market considerations and the shares being available elsewhere, we will be available, I believe, quite shortly on the OTC markets in the USA. But over the long term, we've got a board and a team there that's prepared to take this business from an IPO, take investors on the journey, and look to then at a sizable balance sheet, a sizable operating revenue, and strong volume, we're appropriately placed then to look at a main market listing. So we went through the IPO process, and we purposely made sure that we were taking investors on the journey and starting with a balance sheet and a stack that is in line with the operating revenue, and take investors on that journey rather than ask them to meet us at the destination and raise a considerable sum prior to IPO. So we set out to raise a minimum of 1.5 million. We were several times oversubscribed in both the retail and the institutional side of the raise. We capped that at 3.3 million. We've since then gone on to make a number of Bitcoin purchases, and we're holding 42.425 Bitcoin now. We increased our Bitcoin yield by, I believe, 350% plus with the acquisitions since just before Christmas. Average purchase price for around $80,000. And then what we've also rolled out since the IPO a few weeks ago, we've rolled out our 2026 XCE Bitcoin bond program. Issued the first bond for 10 Bitcoin. That's been fully subscribed and settled just recently. And that's the first time that there is a Bitcoin denominated bond that is truly denominated in Bitcoin, in that our conversion price tracks the Bitcoin price. We've just gone through a period where the Bitcoin price has dropped unexpectedly for a lot of people. I've lived through this personally, and we've also lived and bought through this as a business for 4 years. So we've designed the bond to ensure that the conversion price draws down with the Bitcoin price, and provided our shares outperform Bitcoin by 20%, they convert and that moves on to a balance sheet. So from the Bitcoin Treasury side, I believe we have an extremely strong capital markets expertise in the team to deliver on that strategy. And when you combine that with an operating business that, in our conservative estimates, with the growth plan in place for the operational business, even if the capital markets were closed to us, even if we weren't able to do a convertible bond, we would still be adding 25% Bitcoin per share yield. So we've tried to build the business to make it as attractive as possible to the capital markets as a direct result of the operational growth and the operational revenues and the strategy we have in place. So that hopefully sums up kind of the combination and where they meet.
Yes. And could you please explain how the Bitcoin bond work?
Yeah, so we signed a Bitcoin bond. So if you wanted to settle that bond in Bitcoin, or if an institutional or high net worth investors holding significant amounts of Bitcoin and they want to settle the bond in Bitcoin, what they would do is, if I take that one for example, if they're giving us 10 Bitcoin or 50 Bitcoin or 100 Bitcoin, they buy the bond with the Bitcoin. We're holding that Bitcoin in a segregated wallet, so they know we're not doing anything with the Bitcoin. The Bitcoin is just being held. The bond is a 12-month period. It's zero interest, and we're selling them at a 30% premium to share price. So it benefits the shareholders and it benefits the bond buyers. For the bond buyers, they convert when our share price exceeds and outperforms Bitcoin by 20%. The downside for the bond buyers is capped at 2%, which covers our costs for executing the bond. So for a bond buyer, they're looking at it as if they've put 10 Bitcoin in or 100 Bitcoin, let's round that out. If they put 100 Bitcoin in, we get through the 12-month maturity and the bond hasn't converted and they choose to be redeemed in Bitcoin, they simply get 98 Bitcoin back. So it caps the downside and tracks Bitcoin effectively. Now, what we've also added in there in order to benefit shareholders and make sure that we are ultimately gearing at increasing Bitcoin per share, and we want that Bitcoin on the balance sheet, is the ability to then refix if we need to at the end of that period, provided we're above and at a healthy MNAV that increases Bitcoin per share, to refix that conversion price should we need to at that stage, to make it attractive for the bond buyers to accept shares in return rather than the Bitcoin. So we believe that's the most efficient, most effective, most attractive bond that's been designed. But we're building on bonds that other people have done in the past, and we're just we've got a team there. Richard Byworth used to run the convertible bond desk, I think the largest convertible bond desk in the world at Nomura. We're building on things that other people have done previously and just trying to optimize. I'm sure the people that follow us will build on them further. But we want to keep designing products that appeal to both the Bitcoin-focused investors and also those investors who are new to this space and coming into this space. And those bonds provide true Bitcoin denomination for investors.
Great. And you told me that your company holds 42.425 Bitcoin on the balance sheet. What are the objectives for this year and for the upcoming years to grow this amount of the balance sheet?
Yeah, I mean, as a PLC and as a CEO of a PLC, we have to be pretty. We sometimes are restricted in saying exactly what we'd like to say. We would like to acquire 1,000 Bitcoin as fast as possible, and objectives-wise, we long-term want to see operational growth and Bitcoin Treasury growth, and we want to be able to move onto a main market in the future and ensure that in the meantime we're executing and we're allowing investors around the world the most effective way to access our shares, which is part of the strategy over the next, I think very shortly will be available on the OTC. So as we move towards that goal, at the moment you would see benchmarks at say it would be realistic to start the preparations for uplisting at 300 to 500 Bitcoin. And we want to use both the equity raising tools that we have in place. We have an accelerated placement agreement with one of our capital markets partners that would allow us to ensure we're tempering an MNAV in a high MNAV and high volume environment with an ATM-like issuance that would accrete value for our shareholders, which we will use appropriately on behalf of shareholders. And then we have, for a low MNAV environment and for a market environment similar to right now, we have the tools, the XE Bitcoin bond program, which we want to scale up throughout this year. So when that 10 Bitcoin bond converts, we want to issue the next tranches, and we want to keep raising those tranches and raising the level of those tranches in order to effectively use this period now to build the strongest balance sheet possible for the business over the next 4-8 years, and be able to, the more, I suppose, aggressive we are in building the balance sheet, building the Bitcoin balance sheet and executing the Bitcoin Treasury strategy, the more revenue we attract to the operating business as well. From a point of view, we become more and more appealing to both high performers in our industry and competitors who want to join the group. So they're the benchmarks that I would run through on there. And yeah, from an operational point of view, like I said, I think we're in a very strong position from a point of view of the conservative growth plans of the operating business, mean we can still lock in, and we still plan to lock in Bitcoin per share growth, even in environments like we're in this week and last week.
Yes, talking about this week and last week and everything that is happening since October 6th. Last year was a year where the business or the Bitcoin treasury companies really exploded, with critics and support from mixed feelings from the Bitcoin community. How do you see this year for the current Bitcoin treasury companies, and probably if you see that there are going to come new companies to the space? How do you see the evolution of the business now?
Yeah, I think what you're seeing is very similar. If I use the best analogy, very similar to 2013 to 2015 Bitcoin adoption. 0.3% of the world probably truly understand Bitcoin as an asset class. Then you've got to really understand Bitcoin as an asset class to then really understand Bitcoin treasury companies, which is another layer of detailed understanding and detailed research. And I think what you see when you look at 2013, 2015 in Bitcoin, you've seen extreme volatility up and down, and people buying low, trying to sell high, and buying, then ending up watching it come down and selling low, and then watching it go back up and buying high. And I think what you see is with the Bitcoin treasury companies over, let's say, the last 12 months, which has been a huge growth in the maturity of the business model and the execution and the governance and the awareness of the business model, you see a very similar mindset to that early Bitcoin adoption, where people are looking at it as a trade somewhat, and you're seeing a lot of volatility. And I believe that, very similar to Bitcoin, from an investor point of view, the most optimal strategy would be to probably, when we look back in 4 to 8 years, buy on a consistent weekly basis over a long period of time. Because these businesses that are holding 500, 1,000, 10,000, 700,000 plus Bitcoin, at some point over the next 4, 8, 10 years, I firmly believe Bitcoin's going to be measured at $1 million per coin. And those businesses have not just, I think people see them as just storing Bitcoin sometimes and don't realize that that gives additional options, additional innovation, and additional use cases as the price of Bitcoin appreciates over the long term. So you've seen strategy again pioneer with the successful stretch product, and businesses will follow on with more preferred share offerings, and there'll be a maturity and a development within the space. But ultimately, I see businesses that have specialist talent on the board. Have they got a CEO and a founder who's a Bitcoiner and got a history in this space, who can execute with high conviction? Because in 4 and 8 years and 12 years time, it's going to become more and more popular to have a Bitcoin balance sheet, and more public companies will do it. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're in the space we're in right now, when people are gearing the businesses to both grow Bitcoin per share, and in our case, grow Bitcoin per share and grow operational revenue at the same time. So I think what you'll see is those who have not just CEOs who are Bitcoiners and absolutely convicted in the asset class and can really embed it in the business, but those who have a team and a Bitcoin board that understand the strategy and have the capability to take the strategy forward within the capital markets. You will see probably, I think we've seen 1 or 2 businesses in jurisdictions take that like significant. We are the I don't want to use the term, but they're very much focused as a Bitcoin Treasury company, and you'll see one probably company in a similar winner takes most environment in each industry that can inject Bitcoin into the industry. And we plan to be internationally recognized as the Bitcoin powered international recruitment company. There'll be other businesses within industries that look to dominate their industry by coupling a Bitcoin Treasury strategy with talent attraction and consolidation of their industry that drives Bitcoin per share and doesn't use cash. And I think that's where you'll see it develop. And over the last 12 months, it's been people just building their education and understanding of the space and going through those similar cycles to what early Bitcoin adopters went through. And that helps build conviction. Those people who came into the space who understand the space last year are not leaving this space. It would be impossible, and I use this phrase to somebody who talks to me about investing quite a lot. I've spoke to the ex-chairman of the most famous banks in the UK, who I've made friends with a few years ago. Long story short, trapped with me on a safari on my honeymoon was the ex-chairman of a British bank. So he just got Bitcoin every day while we went round in the vehicles doing the safari. And I've stayed in touch with him and spoke about it. These people are starting to understand it, starting to embrace the conversation, and starting to become the big gain, I think, over the last 12 months is Bitcoin doesn't get wrote off in a serious conversation anymore. It might still do by some of the mainstream media, but it doesn't when you sat in a room having a conversation with a capital allocator. They ask good questions, they're intrigued, and they're looking to see where it's going. But from a point of view of those people who've come into the space, they're not leaving. And somebody who talks to me about investments quite a lot a couple of years ago said to me, what about this? And what about this? And my answer was, I will never invest my trapped capital in the tax-wrapped pension schemes and ISA saving schemes in the UK in a business that is not buying Bitcoin ever again, because I believe that they are doing the shareholders a disservice over the long term. And effectively, it's a leaking bucket if they're holding cash on their balance sheet. So the people who come into this space and understand Bitcoin and then understand Bitcoin treasuries aren't leaving.
Yes, of course. I think that I agree the vision that you have, that probably the space of Bitcoin treasuries is like Bitcoin during the 2013, 2015. Not many people were understanding. And I think that the people that went all in on treasuries is not leaving the space. And how do you feel when you read all this news that probably people that don't understand are spreading across X, that Sailor is going to be liquidated if Bitcoin falls below this or that price? How do you feel when you read that?
I don't really focus on it too much, if I'm being honest. It doesn't take much time out of my day. If I think, to quote Satoshi, if people don't understand it or don't get it, you'd kind of. I have time to explain Bitcoin to people. I have time to explain Bitcoin treasury companies to explain to people. I have time to talk about this business to people. But there's a small filter for me, and when it looks like coordinated FUD that's in somebody's own interests, I don't engage in that. And I think anybody with any credible understanding of business, corporate environment, and capital markets would not be coming out with the statement that at some point, I daren't say the phrase, at some point MicroStrategy are in difficulty because the Bitcoin's dropped 20% in price. I was a MicroStrategy holder in 2020 as soon as I started executing the strategy. And I've been through the whole process of buying consistently with MicroStrategy and watching their MNAV go below 1 and watching the average purchase price be higher than the price of Bitcoin at the time, and all these things. And I think they're compounding resilience and compounding belief and compounding innovation. And I believe they'll be the biggest company in the world within the next decade. I don't think it matters what somebody on X who's not ran a business, doesn't understand capital markets, and has some kind of motivation, because some of them are journalists, some of them are people who've got credible badges from the legacy trust society that we all used to live in, and you just feel like there's an incentive for them to be saying what they're saying, but there's very little credibility with it, so I don't give it too much time of day.
Yes, totally agree what you say. People from the legacy finance media, I think that, I don't know if they do this because they don't really understand or because they have other incentives to do that.
I nearly asked the other day because I think I had 1,200 likes on a Financial Times comment I did about a DCA. If you'd have DCA'd since the first article the Financial Times wrote about Bitcoin, here is what the return would be. And I think I did the same yesterday to The Economist just before I went to sleep. So I don't mind having a response to those big news articles and legacy media that attack Bitcoin unnecessarily without a deep understanding of Bitcoin. I think that is part of the immune system of the Bitcoin network and the people within Bitcoin, that we are there to defend the network, defend Bitcoin, and help people understand Bitcoin. And I think the frustration from Bitcoiners comes from those attacks that actually inadvertently damage people's futures. So when you're speaking to the family and friends who you love about Bitcoin for, in my case, let's say 10 years, and they're coming on a journey with you for 10 years, watching you do what you do. And I don't think my friends and family and businesses that I've known in the last 4 years, when we were privately and not publicly, I wasn't talking about buying Bitcoin on the balance sheet from 2021 to 2025, but I speak in private about it. They're building their conviction without allocating and without really getting it from people like myself. So when you see coordinated FUD on quantum, on this, on that, when you see it coming in and you have to continually have them conversations where you're helping people understand that, no, this isn't something new. I'm comfortable with it. I understand it. Here's where it's going in the future. And they're building their conviction. that kind of FUD really holds back adoption. And I think there's a benefit to being decentralized. There's a benefit to being, but one of the drawbacks is there is no marketing company, there is no PR company, there is nobody telling a story other than Bitcoiners, and Bitcoiners come from every single different background and all agree on one thing: Bitcoin drives a better society, better future for people, better future for businesses, and if we can help communicate that, it's for everyone, regardless of the corporation, regardless of the regardless of the people who want to adopt Bitcoin, they can. It is for anyone who chooses to adopt it. So it's frustrating to see FUD sometimes, but it's part and parcel of adoption.
Yeah, I think that sometimes it's frustrating because probably there are respected journalists, that some people that are hesitant about Bitcoin, they listen to them and they get a misunderstanding. But as you said, I think that the biggest, I think that Bitcoin is not changing the finance; it's also changing the narratives. A lot of people that have emerged, because I think that we, the Bitcoiners, find the need the obligation of spreading the word, the obligation of helping the people, teaching the people what is Bitcoin and what it's about, and why we are here fighting this fight.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's whenever you're making a big change within your business. So I've spent probably 2 years having the conversations privately with staff in our business, saying this is the history of money. This is the asset. These are asset classes. This is how Bitcoin works. These are the fundamental principles of Bitcoin. Conversation a few months later, Bitcoin on the balance sheet for 4 years. What's the effect? The price went down. Our revenues went up. We bought more and more. And when it came up a little bit, we were up 20%. When it gets back to there, we're up 120% going into the IPO. It's like, this is a long-term strategy. I'm here to educate, but I'm also here to support and help people on their own journey. And right now, I've started the year with this long-term strategy for our business and to disrupt it. And part of that is the obligation, because I have a mission to help our industry understand Bitcoin and all the industries that are plugged into executive recruitment. We have conversations with senior level people all around the world across a number of different industries. We can start having that conversation about Bitcoin at the boardroom tables with those client partners who trust us to find them the best talent, and the best talent going into those businesses. Then we help gain more advocates for Bitcoin, and we help increase the speed of that adoption and the better future that comes after it. And part of my responsibility is to speak to the mainstream media. So we had a really positive article in the Daily Mail, which is a sizably viewed newspaper in the UK and around the world. And I think it started with, it's not a get rich quick scheme. It is a do not get poor slowly scheme. And I think they quoted me on that. And it also went through comparing the fiat losses over the last 5 years through inflation to the Bitcoin gains over the 5 years. So I think there are mainstream media. Yorkshire Post, which is a sizable one in the UK, put an article out on us, and I didn't know what was going to be said in it. I don't know what the editorial is going to look like. You're just having a genuine conversation for an hour, and we've had good results since. So I hope to continue doing that. And I think it's very important to be doing that in a considered manner where you can take the time and answer questions regardless of the sentiment in the Bitcoin price. I think it's just as important to be compounding that message when the price is going down and when the price is flat as it is when the price is going up. But naturally, there is more interest in the conversation when the price is going up. And I firmly believe that we are going to see those catalysts that drive that price up in a pretty strong manner at some point. And in the meantime, it's about delivering on the strategy, increasing Bitcoin per share and increasing the Bitcoin held. There's an opportunity in every single type of environment in Bitcoin.
Yes, and what advice do you give for any CEO or business owner that they didn't yet add Bitcoin to their balance sheet?
For a business owner, if you've got the control and you can make the decision, I would say if you're already a Bitcoiner, it obviously makes sense, but open up the channels to be able to buy Bitcoin. So with a credible Bitcoin only, ideally, exchange and a business account, so that when you decide to do it, you can. And then just, I suppose, from point of view, just be open and clear and educate your partners, the accountants and anybody else who would need to know about it on how to manage it. I can't speak internationally, but it's quite simple in the UK. And just match your level of allocation with your conviction. If you've got a 5% conviction in Bitcoin, maybe a 5% allocation every month to your reserve cash would be a good idea. If you've got a 50% conviction in Bitcoin, maybe a 50% allocation every month with your surplus cash would be a good idea. If you've got 100% conviction in Bitcoin, maybe you're ready for a 4-year journey with 100% allocation to Bitcoin. And if you've got a maximalist 200, 300, 400% allocation in Bitcoin, do it for 4 years for an 80% drawdown. Then take the business public. Use the use the share options to bring people into the business, and then begin begin driving operational revenue with Bitcoin, and build a board and go for it. So I think the opportunity is there in each industry. And there's a lot of industries in the world, and there's a lot of companies in the world. And those who want to do it, I think, should start steady and do 4 years building a Bitcoin balance sheet privately,
Yes.
not necessarily marketing that they're doing it. It would be nice if they did, but there's a risk to the business. There's a risk to distraction from what their clients are speaking about, maybe. So just do whatever fits for your business, but get off zero.
Yes, I love this quote that allocate your conviction to Bitcoin. If your conviction is 5%, go 5%. This is a good quote to measure. Like, sometimes people ask me, or my friends ask me about Bitcoin, and they are not 100%. I always say, just put a small amount, something that you are not, that doesn't change your life if you lose. Of course, for me, in the long term, they are going to win. But some friends bought Bitcoin last year when it was near 100K, and now it's 66. So, and they want to kill me, but it is what it is. You need to think on the long run.
Bitcoin is the cheat code, but there is no cheat code for Bitcoin. So it doesn't matter when you start, when it clicks, and when people are like, I get it, they'll buy, and then they'll probably watch it draw down in price either the day after or the weeks after. And there's nothing you can do about that. They're more likely to start when price is going up. Is just educate and matching the allocation with conviction levels. And just, I think people coming into the space probably have a different view on what it's really like to be a Bitcoiner, and what 2016 to 2020 felt like for people in Bitcoin, and what 2021 to 2025 felt like for people in Bitcoin. And I think that goes all the way back to the FUD you were speaking about earlier, Fernando, in that those who knew about Bitcoin in 2013 and 2015 and spoke out publicly negatively about it, and then consciously decided they would never allocate to it, rather than putting their time and energy into understanding it and allocating to it, ego stands in the way, and they would prefer to put their time and energy into protecting their ego and hoping that Bitcoin fails. These articles that I see going out in the last few weeks are not written by people who have a deep understanding of Bitcoin, and they're not written because they believe Bitcoin will fail. They're writing those articles because they want Bitcoin to fail, and it won't. It's here forever, and it's going to continue making the articles that are written in 2026 look just like the articles that were written in 2016.
Yes, of course. I agree with that, because on Sunday I do a live stream in Spanish, only myself, talking about general stuff about Bitcoin. And the past Sunday I went through the tweets of all the people that declare Bitcoin dead, again, that every time that we have a correction, all these people came out of the caves and start saying the same crap. Bitcoin is gonna die. Now at 60K, probably in 4 years at 300K. And then when it falls from probably 2 million to 1.5 million, you're gonna say the same. I think that these people, as you said, they didn't put their ego aside. They didn't put the time to study Bitcoin. And now they want Bitcoin to fail because they think they lost the opportunity. Probably these people have the chance to buy Bitcoin at 1,000 US dollars. And because of their ego, they didn't buy. And now they regret. And the way to put this energy is to come out when Bitcoin gets a drop on the price and say, this time Bitcoin is not going to recover. This time Bitcoin is dead. So, but I think that on the other side, on our side, there are a lot of people with a huge conviction on Bitcoin, and we don't care about the price. We believe in the technology, we believe in the revolution, and that's why we are here.
Yeah. I said this in 2018 in a WhatsApp group because I always kind of look back to remind friends about when we first started speaking about Bitcoin. And I think I said something along the lines like, even if Bitcoin stayed the exact same fiat denominated price forever, and it was guaranteed to, it would still be a better place to store your value than a fiat offering, because you can move it anywhere. It's unconfiscatable and you have control over your money. So it's like the revolution that you're speaking about, even at the 30% compound annual growth rate that we expect to see over the next 10 years, those people who haven't started, now's the right time for them to decide what their conviction level is secretly and start allocating at that level while they study with an open mind. But you are seeing over the last couple of years the ETF, highest performing ETF in the world or in the history. You're seeing capital markets embrace the asset. You're seeing governments embrace the asset, and you are seeing a slow, high level institutional corporate adoption, because when a major institution decides to allocate to Bitcoin, or when a government decides to allocate to Bitcoin, it's difficult unless you've been in that scenario to understand the huge, comprehensive policy, governance frameworks, the stakeholder management, the external parties, the due diligence that they will do. And we've got high levels of governance in our business to the level where chairman's company Cartwright's advised on first pension fund allocation. So we've gone through that same level of due diligence on all the exchanges that we use, on the custodians that we partner with, and then the reviews into the future of how we can keep optimizing that and keep reviewing that. If you're a government or a seriously sizable institution with a 100-year history of managing capital, then going through that process could take easily 2 years. So even if they're moving at speed, there's a lot going on beneath the surface within institutions and within governments to try and make sure that they can just do what I said for every private business owner at the moment, which is put the pipes in place to be able to buy when you want to buy. That takes a lot of time. So what I don't think we've seen is that wave of capital after the BlackRock ETF approval. We haven't seen that wave of capital come through yet. We've seen everybody who can access that now, and you'll see far more in the future.
Yes. And how do you see the future of the Bitcoin Treasury industry?
Bitcoin Treasury industry, I think, is the most innovative industry in the world. I think it'll be the fastest growing industry in the world. And at some point in the future, the businesses that hold the most Bitcoin will be the most powerful companies in the world. I'd like to see not just, I spoke earlier saying, look, we're looking to go onto the US market soon. We're looking to execute our Bitcoin strategy and continue executing that. We're looking to see the operational growth. And we believe that regardless of capital markets, we can deliver that 25% Bitcoin yield. Now, where I see the future of the industry, the most important thing is not one business owning 1,000 Bitcoin or one business owning 1,000,000 Bitcoin. It's 1,000 businesses owning 1 Bitcoin or 1,000,000 businesses owning point something Bitcoin. Because when the values align and the incentives align, you can create real change. And over the next 4 to 8 years, the more businesses that adopt Bitcoin onto the balance sheet, you have to imagine that those businesses are employing people who then understand Bitcoin and can have access to Bitcoin-backed share options and can have access to Bitcoin bonuses maybe in the future or incentives that other businesses will design. They've got customers that will then be seeing Bitcoin and being encouraged to use Bitcoin or incentivized to use Bitcoin. And then you've got how powerful is that network? And we're building a network in the UK, the Bitcoin Business Network. How powerful is that network when the majority of businesses in the country are holding Bitcoin on the balance sheet, and a conversation needs to happen with the government, the regulators, and the powers that be? By having that kind of strength in the network and the business adoption across markets and across countries and across industries, you start gaining a serious voice, and that's an advocate for Bitcoin that's extremely powerful. So I see great success for the Bitcoin Treasury companies, more innovation for the Bitcoin Treasury companies, but ultimately that those businesses holding the most Bitcoin become the most powerful in either their regions or their industries.
Yes, totally agree on that. And to wrap up, I have 2 more questions. The first question is, how do you see the future of Bitcoin?
World reserve asset, obviously. But I think it provides a future for... There's never been an asset class that's also a commodity, that's also a money, a currency, that can be accessed by every single person there or thereabouts on the planet and gives them hope for a better future and incentivizes better behaviors, if you like, in the shorter term. So it trains a lower time preference, and the future for Bitcoin is to slowly, by osmosis, integrate itself into every aspect of people's lives, much as fiat is now. Every time you're on an app, it'll be Bitcoin in the background. Every time you're proving who you are to access your X account, it'll be Bitcoin in the background. The Bitcoin network will be as embedded as Bitcoin being used as an asset and used as a currency.
Totally agree on that. And the last question is, if you had the chance to sit down with Satoshi Nakamoto, what would you ask or say to him, her, or them?
I would say thank you. And I would ask them to tell me the story leading up to the Genesis block and tell me the story after that. And I would let them know that I don't need them to release their identity to me or any details that would, but I would love to hear the story, and I would love to hear how they feel about it today, because for my eyes, in 100 years, in 200 years, and in 300 years, they're going to be looked back on as someone who really did change the world.
Yes, totally agree. And I would love to know also, if I had the chance to know the story previous to the Genesis block, because it's like the same. Many people ask me, what would you ask Satoshi? And everyone, I do the same question when I start the podcast. How were you Orange Pill? Because I want to know the story. Why did you arrive to Bitcoin? So for Satoshi, it's the same, because we are all Satoshi. And for me, it's the same. How were you Orange Pill? How did you come with this idea of Bitcoin? So Scott, has been a pleasure talking to you. anything else you want to add and how people can contact you?
Yeah, I would say we've obviously recently IPO'd. We're looking to get onto or looking to come onto the US markets very soon. So I'd just say we intend to continue that effort to allow people to access our shares around the world. And if you wanted to get involved in the business, if you're a traditional executive who's watching Bitcoin podcasts and looking for the space for them in the Bitcoin arena, then reach out and get in touch. And if you want to join in the journey, then we have a community on X, the XCE Connecting Excellence community that we're looking to begin building and looking to keep sharing updates, sharing information with. I'm under BTC only Scott Ellam on X, and obviously I live with one half of me still in the fiat world, so you can find me on LinkedIn as well under Scott Ellam. Company's XE Connecting Excellence Group PLC, and our flagship operating business is Spencer Riley. So feel free to reach out and get in touch.
Excellent. Scott, thank you very much for your time. It has been a pleasure, and the best for you and your company. I hope to talk to you in the future to see how everything is evolving.
Yeah, you too, Fernando. Great to speak to you.
Nice to speak. And are you going to be in Bristol, right?
I am going to be in Bristol. Andrew, yes, I spoke to Andrew before their IPO. We kind of hosted a spaces in the UK, and then I remember battling to ensure that we all sort of the network got together to ensure that they could be accessible to those who wanted to invest in all the UK retail brokers. And then I've been through that process myself after they've sort of cleared the regulatory woods, if you like, in the UK to allow businesses to go forward and do what we're doing. So yeah, I spoke to Andrew a few weeks or a couple of months ago, who's been extremely busy himself recently. And
Yes.
yeah, I'll be there in Bristol speaking. Look forward to meeting you there, and that'll be a great conference, not just for the UK, but for Bitcoin Treasury companies.
So see you in Bristol, and we are gonna be able to talk in person.
Perfect. See you soon.
Thank you very much, and thank you to everything who is on the other side. If you like the episode, give us a like, subscribe to our channel, follow us on social media. Of course, follow also Scott and his company on social media, because doing so, you help us a lot in our mission of painting the world orange. Share this episode with the people you love. Share this episode with the people you hate, because we must reach 8 billion people and give them the orange pill. See you in the next episode of our podcast. Stay humble, stack sats, and remember, we are all Satoshi.
My screen, I saw it all start. Bitcoin, a code, a new kind of art. How were you